Welcome to Expedition Self with Sam Parado, a lifelong learner and entrepreneur. Sam is the creator of the growth-producing worlds of Expedition Self, where seekers hang out so they can live a conscious life of love and personal fulfillment. As she shares 4 decades of studying, guiding, and teaching, you'll learn how to go inside and build an empowered relationship with the self. Ignite your self-development process with Sam.
Wow, that's quite an entrance, and it's great music because tonight's show is called The Power of More, a journey to your mighty self. Anyway, wow, what a fun way to start this show. I'm Sam Parado, and I'm your host this evening for our show, and I'm with Expedition Self. I just want to say that, to me, being able to remember how to stay in relationship with our inside self is the way that life shows up for us. And the more we can have that relationship, then the more depth you get to experience each moment with. So tonight, I also, and I'm actually a little nervous to say this, I wanted to let you know that I think I have 2 shows left. I've made a decision that after 3.5 years, it's time for me to take a little bit of a break from this kind of activity. It takes a lot to think about the show and write it up and spend energy on it. And so I'm hoping that you'll all decide to come for my sign-off show next week on Tuesday night. Is it the 16th or the 17th, whatever the Tuesday night of September is? And share in my last show for a while. So anyway, on that note, what a way to start our show tonight. Okay, I'm going to take a breath here. So the thing about more, when I have worked on more, and I've done a radio show on it as well too, is that I actually thought I might even do a TED Talk on this, because it feels like I am going to get through my tears about this. It feels to me like we spend a lot of time wanting more, and I certainly want more with the best of them. But there's a way where the way we actually relate to it is almost separate from the inner self. And so tonight's show, I thought, what an opportunity for us to actually talk about it in a little more depth. And hopefully you'll be able to come away thinking about how the real more of life is about what's on the inside and how you go inside. All right, so I have our quote, a couple quotes actually. So the first one, you can show it partially on the screen, is from my brother. One more slide. There we go. One more slide after that. There we go. The creation of 1,000 forests is in one acorn. Right? The creation of 1,000 forests is in one acorn. I don't know, for me, that is just so symbolic of this idea that more isn't out here, right? It's not beyond us. It's actually that acorn inside of ourselves. And the more we nurture and care for that and cultivate it, then the more we can grow a forest, right? All right, the next slide is by Richard Carlson. As long as you think more is better, you'll never be satisfied. Okay, well, so that's there's a very fine line here between wanting more, even from the inside, and being satisfied at the same time. And I actually think that's one of the most important kind of practices of life, is how to feel like you're enough. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. And also to crave and want and strive for things that you have a fantasy about or you dream about. So it's a great quote for that. All right, one more slide here by Eckhart Tolle. No matter what you have or get, you won't be happy. You will always be looking for something else that promises greater fulfillment, that promises to make your incomplete sense of self complete and fill that sense of lack you feel within. So this one kind of says it all, because this one, really what it's saying is that it's the lack, when it latches on to our constant pursuit of having more, is really the thing that is never fully satisfied, because it's kind of like you're going after it in an indirect way. And this is entirely what we're going to be talking about when we get to the heart, or the meat and potatoes of the show this evening. So I thought, I didn't really quite expect to like have the whole emotional thing going on at the beginning. So I did think we would do just a short experiential kind of go inside, like slight creative visualization, and that would help us get ready for this evening's conversation. So it's important you find a place that you're comfortable and that you can listen, and that you can relax and you can settle into your body. So just for a moment, I would invite you to scan your life right now, yesterday, last week, this year, and think about what is working and what feels right for you. And notice the quality of your most important relationships. And then drop through the hours of your day and think about how you spend it. 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, lunch, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Take a deep breath in and simply be with all that is present in your consciousness, in the here and the now. And then take another breath in and allow one to release. Feel your back and your sits bones leaning on something solid. Notice your feet, the bottoms of them, the tops of them, and wiggle your toes as they make contact with either the inside of your shoes or the floor. And as you're sitting here with me, allow time to fall backwards and reflect back on your entire life. See your younger self, and then notice some of the big moments when you left home, when you made a big change, what it felt like to be you at that moment, that you entered life, you began to make choices. What was driving you at that time? What mattered most? What did you dream about and wish for at that time? And picture your own face filled with emotion and life at any one of those times when you were fully engaged, that you can take yourself back to. And then I'd like you to ask yourself, your younger self, what more did you want at that time? What did having or being more look like to you? Give yourself a moment to breathe into that question, picturing yourself at that younger time as you entered the wider world. What more did you want for yourself? What did you seek? Now breathe into this moment, this one right now, sitting in your body in this time, in this place. And then allow the two images to fold and melt together. What turned out to be the guiding mission of your life? What did it turn out that you were willing to risk to have this particular more that has been the thing that you've pursued being you? And then let yourself just sit with it for just a moment, appreciating all that you've lived through, the hearts you brought with you, the challenges you faced. Appreciate the effort you put into having the life you have, and say a great big thank you to yourself for hanging in there and making things happen that really meant something to you. And when you feel ready, just bring yourself back to the room you're resting in, the one that's listening or watching, and bring your awareness to this conversation this evening. I wish for you that tonight, in the next hour, something will stand out for you that's relevant and meaningful around something that you're working with in your life, that you're able to make a connection with yourself in a different way or a deeper way, or just appreciate the more that has been wrapped around everything that you have chosen and engaged in your life. All right, we're back. All right, so I'm going to also remind you, we have a phone number you can call in this evening at 202-570-7057. And I would love to hear from you. Anything that comes up for you, or if I ask a question and you'd like to answer it, it's always great when someone comes on and talks about their own experience. So, okay, every show we have tools. Okay, let me remember the flashlight on the self. All right, always want to keep thinking about the importance of flashlight on the self, because what does the brain love to do? It loves to work the way the eyes do. It flips everything over and has you think about your experience through somebody else's instead of thinking about yours first. So flashlight on the self, that's what that is. And of course, we always bring our magic wand just to help us just make the night a little bit more special. Okay, so throughout all of the shows that I've done recently, we've been talking about the top 10 fundamentals. And I want to just reiterate why the fundamentals matter at this moment. And I also want to focus on one in particular. And so the one that we're going to focus on tonight is speaking the unspeakables. Speaking the unspeakables. So what are unspeakables? Well, there's something that'll hurt another person's feelings. There's something that will cause you to lose in some way, something you're attached to. It's something that will, it's like a set of words, right? Or ideas or actions that will shine negatively on the way you see yourself or others see you. So these top 15 fundamentals are based on the idea that you care. You really care about building real relationship with yourself and with others. They're not going to mean anything to somebody that isn't really like focused on that. So it's like the infinity symbol, the figure 8, you know, like one of these folds into another. And when you work on them, then you work on yourself, and then you work on another, and then you bring that information back to the self, and then you take it back out with the other, right? So the reason that matters, I think a lot of people, what happens is that stops. The infinity doesn't quite connect. So then it looks like somebody else's actions or words are separate from yours, instead of seeing that really everything is trying to assist us in learning and becoming more of who we're capable of being. So can you admit unspeakables to yourself? I was jealous. I didn't feel left out. And so as a result, I wasn't like very participative. Or I don't feel happy about your win because I think I should have won. Or I'm helpful because I'm supposed to be, not because I want to be. Oh, these truths, right? They're so risky to put into words. And oftentimes it's true. There's a reaction you didn't bargain for. And so this is why I try to build my relationship. So there's a capacity to hear the unspeakables, right? We can't just assume that people will be able to do it. So let's see, I just want to get to this note I have about this. Oh yeah. So I have maybe a practical way to build what I would call resilient listening into relationships. So I think of it like balancing plates. Okay, so I brought some plates here. So this idea that what my unspeakable is, I want to say, I don't like you when you yell at me, okay, or when you are yelling or when you're angry. So, but the problem is that if you try to have that conversation without having built the plates underneath it that support it so that someone can hear what's in this top plate. I'm not cracking all my plates. Even if you don't do that, then you actually don't have the ability to be in this conversation. Okay. And so let's see. So this idea of the top plate is the one you want to speak about, but then you have to figure out what are the conversations that you have to be in under that so that that person can hear it in a way that builds relationship and that you can speak it in a way that builds relationship. All right. Okay. So here's an example. Like one of the plates might be a conversation about how the other person thinks about negative things or about selfishness or about being honest, because people have a relationship to these ideas. And that's what dictates how they hear what you're actually saying. Or let's see, another plate. I'm going to get one of the bigger plates just to demonstrate here. Perhaps you need to speak about how that person hears negativity and what it triggers or makes them feel about their self-image. Okay, there's another plate. All right, here's another one. Perhaps you need to do some work on how you think of unspeakables yourself. Like, do you have judgmental feelings about it? Like you make it really wrong, right? So that when you speak to the person, that affects the layer. I mean, I can just tell you, I've spent a lot of time practicing how to speak about things in a way that doesn't make them inflammatory, right? Okay, one more. I'm going to do another plate, right? Maybe one of these plates is a conversation about how harmony in a relationship doesn't really build emotional intimacy, and that taking risk is important. And how do they feel about that? Okay, so it's unique to each relationship that you have, right? Because what you're really trying to do is say, how do I build a solid foundation to hear unspeakables and speak unspeakables? So I think it's probably obvious that if you haven't looked at these underlying plates related to your listening to build your own resiliency, it's pretty hard to expect someone else to hear your unspeakable. And there's another thing that's got to be said, right? Is all of this is practice. It's practice in relationship and practice being human. So I don't know how many times I'll say to people, no, we're practicing this. It's not all bad. It's not the end of the world. We're going to have a conversation and see how it goes and see how you feel about it. See, it means that you're working to hear those unspeakables from the inside. You need to notice how you react to them, what your brain does with them, and how you use them potentially, possibly against yourself. And then you work with the ones that come towards you from others, right? Or the ones that you speak. You could set up a series of conversations to move yourself into a place where you can speak them. And there's nothing wrong with being sensitive to how someone will react or being sensitive to how it feels for you, right? What does sensitive mean? It means you go slow, you walk softly, you're gentle, and you speak about that part as you deliver the more difficult message. You say, oh, listen, I think this is going to be really hard. It's hard for me to say. I think it's going to be hard to hear, right? Your heart is clearly on the line, right? It's at stake. So an unspeakable is something you know isn't wanted or desirable or positive in itself, right? It's maybe something you've judged or are afraid of or would rather avoid. But when you give yourself room to take risk with them, your relationship with yourself and others will absolutely, unequivocally, hands down, 100%, I'm sure, be better, right? And then that makes that fulfillment. So this is why it fits with the more, right? Because that true fulfillment, right, becomes more possible. You know how to pull the leverage or bring yourself to build leverage to be able to have that resilient listening and to be able to speak things that normally people run from. All right. I'm hoping that was helpful. I'm going to do my wand. We're going to separate that. So that closes out one of our fundamentals, one of our 15 fundamentals. So the next piece is, and I'm going to probably have a break here in the middle of it, but this is our core work: communication, ownership, relationship, and emotions. So tonight's core work is going to link up with our fundamentals because I want to focus on how ownership is really self-awareness. So if you're doing core work in life, and let's face it, the core work is the core of why we're here and what matters most to us, right? It's how we flourish or we don't, right? Our relationships mean everything. So the more we work and grow and expand our skills in the area of communication and ownership, relationship and emotion, the more we will feel fulfilled, we'll be successful, and we'll have a freedom to be ourselves. And we'll develop a foundation, right, that we can lean on and rely on. And so many of us are operating where the security of life doesn't feel quite so secure. So self-awareness is the result of working on these core aspects of being. You're able to feel and sense and verbalize, notice, care about, and create movement for your internal information. So the more you can do all of that, the more often and bring it to more difficult scenarios, more complex ones, right? The more self-aware you are. And then that's what you're able to bring forward in your life, because you have all that in your toolkit. You have all that substance. You have all that, the rootedness that you can bring and have more power. So it starts out really simply. Someone says something you don't like, you feel offended. Okay, well, what do you notice? What do you feel? What can you own about your life experience that matches up to what offended you? And this is that ownership I talk about, right? So what do you care about inside of this interaction? What's important about it? See, ownership is chocked full of moments in your life when you felt the same thing that just offended you, or you were living in dynamics with people that parallel the dynamic that's happening in this example. Ownership, it invites you to drop the defenses, the self-protection, the over-explaining, the rationalizing, right? And say, oh yeah, this is what happened for me. This is why I was triggered, right? And when I do that, the reason my eyes roll back is because I'm like, holy moly, I didn't see that mystery, right? And we can say, this is what happens when you say these words to me. So for me, I have, as an example, I have big time reactions to getting teased about things. And I think I'm innately teasable because everything is important at some moment or another, right? And so I get really triggered if I've asked someone not to tease me about it, right? So I have a lot of self-awareness about what that feels like in my body and why it upsets me, right? I'm aware that someone teasing me in the present isn't the same as being teased by my stepfather or uncle as a little girl, which felt really insensitive, invalidating, and mean-spirited, right? But it doesn't matter, because the teasing that happened for me as a little girl had me feel unsafe and unloved, mistreated, and super, super like powerless, like I couldn't change it. So the important thing here is that the unspeakable is, it could be, right? I could be afraid to say this because I wouldn't want to be vulnerable. I don't like when you tease me, right? And the thing that goes behind that is I actually get very scared of being in a relationship with you. I'm role playing here, and I unconsciously project that I'm going to feel these same things in the future if you keep teasing me. So the person that I'm talking about, the person I'm talking to, I lost track there, may not want to hear about these things. They may feel defensive that I'm having an experience like that, or that I'm even sharing it, right? And that's one of the plays, because it means that the person I'm relating with doesn't care about my self-awareness, may have difficulty with self-awareness themselves, is uncomfortable. And we might even find that they don't want to be self-aware themselves. So that's why it's a plate. So I can't truck in saying, I want to tell you what's going on here and expect that to go exactly well. I'm going to put the plate down when I have a situation where I haven't laid the groundwork for self-awareness being an important part of my relationship with that person. So I certainly may need to make more room and perceive the teasing differently, right? That's my side of that. But if we're going to build relationship, there's the plate, then we have to agree that one of us is aware. If the one of us is aware, by the way, this rhymes. If one of us is aware, then the other one's going to care, right? If one of us is aware, then the other one's going to care. I love that. Okay. All right. So without self-awareness, when we're relating, then it's likely that someone will do something that sets someone else off or shuts them down. And then they do really weird things that no one understands. Like, how many times have you been in an interaction with someone and something's gone on and you're like, why'd you just do that? Why'd you change the subject? Why'd you leave the party and not say goodbye to everyone? Like, what's going on with you that you just suddenly got annoyed? See, this is the thing when you don't have self-awareness and you can't talk about it and you can't reflect on it. You're left with actions that are abrupt or odd or unexplainable, and those break down relationship. I mean, really, the list goes on and on. The unexplainable actions that occur when self-awareness isn't part of a relationship. So people can make sense. They can be understood, but they have to be willing to work with real ownership and deep emotion and ways to communicate that allow for more freedom and an investment in being and building relationship. I have one last thing to say before we go on break here about this. So many people that I talk to are in relationship with someone that they would like to have self-awareness and this kind of core experience going on, and that they don't know how to create it with that other person. Everything I just talked about is what that looks like, and it is all about you getting better and better and better at hearing your own unspeakables, getting ownership about them, and being willing to be vulnerable so that then you can start to do the work with the plates. Like, what do we need to talk about? What do we need to get on the same page about? And one of the things you talk about is, I want to live in self-awareness. I want to have a core of my life be made up of these important self-development, self-relationship kinds of things. So, okay, on that note, I think we're at break time. And when we come back, we're going to dive into the mighty power of more.
Times TV.
In a world filled with constant noise and distractions, where finding meaning feels like an endless search. Introducing Daily Dispatch, your daily pathway to inner growth and self-discovery. Each day, receive a personalized self-growth prompt. Crafted by a seasoned growth expert with over 40 years of teaching personal mastery. Join thousands of professionals who have found clarity and purpose with Daily Dispatch. Start your free trial today and unlock a more meaningful life, one day at a time. Daily Dispatch. Discover your inner world. Live more consciously in every moment. Get your free trial at www.expeditionself.com/daily-dispatch.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back. I'm Sam Parado. You're watching Expedition Self. We're talking about the power of more. and developing a mighty self. And I think about that last commercial. Boy, tonight, if you're in the United States, this is a night to remember how to bring ourselves back together again, right? Anyway, the other thing I also wanted to do is, Chris, can you show slide number 6? I want, for those of you who have been following along or just interested in the 15 fundamentals, this is a good time to take a screenshot of this. If you just, I think you can actually take me out for just a second, Chris, so that they can get a screenshot. But we have, and you put it somewhere you can see. It's nice and colorful. It's a great way to remember how to keep working one of these. And also from a learning standpoint, you can just pick one and decide to study it for a week and bring it to everything you do and think about how it actually works. Okay, we can take that down. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to read you a poem. And so it's on slide number 8. All right. So this one is by Eckhart Tolle as well. No ego can last for long without the need for more. Therefore, wanting keeps the ego alive much more than having. The ego wants to want more than it wants to have. And so the shallow satisfaction of having is always replaced by more wanting. Oh boy, that is deep. So I want to just say something as we begin to talk about the journey to your mighty self with more. I believe that we survive because of our ego, and that the world is a rough, tough, and tumble place. And if you don't have an ego, oftentimes, then when things happen, you have no ability to push back or challenge or hold your own in the face of someone else who is not into self-awareness or not caring about how it goes for you. That said, I think we're always trying to create an allowing of the ego to slip to the side and to not run us and to not demand to be fed. And so this next part of the conversation is really a conversation about how to get the wanting for more redirected inside the self, so that then the more that you get in life, the things that come to you are not where you're attached. All right. So, okay, let's dive in. So a conversation about more, it causes us to think about how we're engaging with life to actually have the lives that we want. It's a big, big conversation. We probably could be in it for days and days and days, but we have to start somewhere. So I think we should start in my favorite place, the outside versus the inside. So I'd like you to think of some outside mores, things or events or toys or accomplishments, like things you can have or experience that validate your existence in a very tangible way. Okay, so more money, more new tech gadgets, more books, more degrees, hobby collectibles, like collections, right? More parties, more friends, more fans, more likes, more house, right? It's the stuff you can actually add up, and it exists. Its basic existence is outside of yourself, right? It comes to you. Okay, so let's ask yourself right now, how have you pursued more in your life? Like, are you a person who is driven by having these kinds of mores, or are you someone who turns your nose up towards them? And then why do you think you relate to these kinds of more things the way you do? What were some of the stories told as you grew up, right, that influenced the way you think about more, going after more, having more, receiving more? I think I have a whole radio show I did on receiving, and it's a very close cousin to this conversation. I can rattle off a few of the ones I've heard of late. My parents tried, this is somebody speaking, right? My parents, they tried to buy our love. They got us anything we wanted. They sent us to great schools. They made sure we had plenty of opportunity. to pursue our activities, but they didn't give us more time, more of their attention, their listening. And so now I don't care about these things. It doesn't matter to me whether I drive a beat up truck and I don't have the most money on the block, because I spend my time being in life and appreciating the small things, and I don't want to be my parents. Or in contrast, the person who was pushed, right, and driven about getting good grades so they could get a scholarship and they could get into a good college, or they could get into a high school, right, that helped them. Like the grades and being disciplined were the most important value in the home. That was the more. You have to be more, right, more disciplined. You have to get better grades. And then that person still believes that their sense of self is based on all of that discipline and education. Being smart is really important. And being noticed for being smart is a big deal. Degrees, grants for research, acknowledgement within the community, tenure, right? Like it matters like everything to this person. Now, I'm just giving you some examples for you to think about, because really the best example I want you to do is you, right? We also could include the person who grows up without enough food or comfort in their home, and then spends their whole life trying to make sure that they have more than they did when they were young. And I just want to say some of it is very unconscious. And so it looks like good living or making good decisions or the right choices, when really what's going on is the drive, right, to have more than they did then when they were young is so strong. So what have you pursued in this category of more from the outside? And like I said, none of it's wrong or bad. It's more like, can you see it? Can you look at it? And then how did those things influence you and your choices, your everyday choices, the small ones that we don't always think about? What role has having more of things, whatever those things are that you pursue, what role has it played in your life? So here's the big question. When you got the thing you thought you needed or wanted, what did it do for you? Did it provide you what you thought it would? One of my last home that I moved into, which was 35 years ago, not this home that I live in now, I remember walking in the day we moved, because all I ever wanted was a home that was one I loved, and that one I could be in, and with one that was colorful, right? Because I love color. And I sat in the corner of one of the rooms on the day that we moved in, and no one else was there. And I thought, I'm done. I am complete right now. And I went to Sandy Brown, who happened to be the person coaching me at the time. And I actually said to her, I'm done. I've made it in my life. I'm good. I was in my early 30s. And I said, I don't even need to do any more growth work. I'm completely done. And for the next year, I stopped everything. And after the end of the year, something really profound happened. I realized that I wasn't growing anymore to fix things or to get something more. I realized that it was actually how I wanted to live. And it was a huge, huge pivot in my life. Like I describe it as, after that point, I crossed the river and I never went back. I always, from that point forward, understood that what made me happy, what was fulfilling for me, was this inner relationship with myself. And that was like, I want to say 35 years ago, right? That all happened. All right. So the challenge with pushing on this idea of wanting more from the outside is that it makes us feel something really important on the inside. More money provides more freedom to choose where we live and how we live and who we live around, right? And what we do in our lifestyle. And when we have more freedom, well, then we feel less compressed and dominated and driven by external forces in life, right? And then that helps us to alter moments when, from our past, right, any form of authority ruled over us in a way that felt oppressive and possibly uncaring too. See, bottom line is that it can very much look like to acquire more externally means we're going to feel differently on the inside because it's going to give us this added freedom of choice making. And of course, there are also times when the effort to have more, it doesn't pay off or yield what you thought it would. Oh, those are big growth moments, right? When you kind of in your head have this idea that you're going for something and then it doesn't pan out and you're like, wait a minute, I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to and I'm supposed to get that. Yeah, I know. I have a couple more stories. I know of a family, super successful. Father was a partner in a law firm, mom, dedicated homemaker artist, and they discovered that their son was doing drugs in high school. It was in really bad shape. So the mother, boy, she ground down. She got in there and she started to do the family work, right, that often needs to accompany something like that. But the father, he stepped back, right? He kind of resisted putting himself on the line. So I would talk about those plates, right? There was something in the plate between the two of them that didn't sync up in this moment that required really, fighting for his son's life, right? Being vulnerable, right? Anyway, I heard 3 years later that the father, who was 55, actually had a heart attack and died. And so there's this external more thing that was going on when the internal was really needing attention. And that equation didn't set up. It didn't stack up. 1 + 1 did not equal 2, right? So I know that was a really dramatic story, but I see it all the time, including in my own life, right? Which this idea that I've done this thing and I've done that thing and now it should be working and then it doesn't actually work. I get really unhappy. And so here's the thing, anyone left to deal with this disappointment or this sense of I went for more and it didn't work, what's wrong with this picture, right? If they don't have a way to process and understand that from the inside out, then their sense of more now shapes their life where they're still on the more gravy train. It's just now they're the not more gravy train. And they never get off to realize that what really matters is this inside self. All right, so let's continue. So you might recall me speaking about like the 5 core needs of being human, and they are the need to be safe, the need to be acceptable, the need to be valued, the need to be worthy, and the need to be loved. More of anything on the outside is actually an indirect attempt to fill those core needs. There's a bucket. I wish I had a bucket here I could show you. And all the effort that we're doing is hoping to fill this bucket that's basically like, that hungry hippo thing where you go like this and it tries to catch all the balls. That's kind of what it's like. All those core needs, trying to get the balls so that they can have a full tummy. The problem is that it generally doesn't work on its own, right? It gives you some payoff, some on the side, but it doesn't really, right? Because when we acquire more externally, it's more likely that it'll bring up thoughts and feelings that actually do push us to go inside to look for answers. So there's the path, there's the pebbles walking, the breadcrumbs. Except that when we're going for the external win, I don't think we like to deal with all those feelings. So the more we end up finding on the inside because of this push, if we do answer the call, because everything in life produces feelings and connections and memories and inside material, right? So if we answer the call, then the more becomes more real. Because we actually now have more of who we are and how we came to be who we are. Do you see? It's like actual substance. It's like if you put a shovel and you scooped it up yourself, now you have more of you to scoop. So if you're wanting more in life, then you're going to actually seek the wide range of feelings that are offered up to you as part of your humanness when you're going for things, right? But you see, one is first and the other is second. So the going for something isn't the first thing. The first thing is I want to have more inside of my world, and I'm going to take this thing on and then see what shows up. We're seeking something of more all of the time, whether we realize it or not. And acknowledging that we're seeking something is extraordinarily important if we're ever going to actually find it and redirect it. So are you comfortable saying, yes, I want more? Now, this goes away from that poem that I read at the beginning, right? Did you stop wanting more somewhere along the way because the equation didn't work out? Did you give up on something along the way that you wish you hadn't? And do you recognize what more has brought to you? And what happens when you actually acknowledge to yourself, wow, I am actually always seeking more, even if I tell myself I'm not. And this leads, I'm going to get my wand out here, to a super duper important point. We humans will look in all of the wrong places to find that thing that we're seeking more of. And if we don't have a deeper sense of what that more really is, like it's kind of the point of the journey, right? We're going to keep looking in all the wrong places until you find the right one. If you do find the right one ever, I know lifetimes of people that I don't think they found it. I think they kept looking out here and it was always in here, right? Because when that happens, when you get, oh no, it's the inside that's driving everything. That's where I get my more. That's when you'll have gained wisdom and compassion and understanding along the way. So think of it this way. The more you pursue something that's part of the outside world, the more you can get hooked into a cycle to seek more, work harder, acquire, use, seek more, work harder, acquire, use, forget the self. And the more you get caught in that cycle of forgetting the self, well, the more you won't realize that it's not actually meeting your needs on the inside until something happens that's often unsettling or difficult and shakes the whole thing up. Like in that story that I shared with you when the son found himself on drugs. Just for a moment, I want you to think about your friends, your family. Think about their lifetimes, and yours too, of course. But think about how it looks like they're chasing something, or even like avoiding chasing something, but it's still the same. And how they end up feeling unfulfilled. So another thought is that I think we try to have more show up through others, like our children. Like if our children are successful or our children respond to us the way we need them to, right? Or we focus on other people because, like helping everyone else because we don't know how to actually be more for ourselves. This is where one of those plates is selfish, right? How do I actually know that I'm acting on my own behalf, that I'm willing to stand for what it is that I need and matters to me so that I have something to give? I think a lot of times we redirect it around and have it come back because, being important to someone else, right? Being needed, making a contribution that others notice, well, this makes us feel like more. Those core needs, wow, do they feel like they're getting met when somebody else validates for us that we have done something for them or that we are something for them? Now, I just want to take one moment because it's right in here where there is such a very, very, very fine line, like a grain of sand difference between expressing and giving of ourselves and going after more through someone else. And I would ask you, if you want to do some pondering, to think about where that line is. So usually about this point, someone in my audience will say, all right, fine. I'll work on being grateful for what I have. I'll appreciate it more. I'll think it's enough. I'll fall in love with the life I lead without wanting more. I don't think this goal gets to the entire opportunity around more. Although I think it's a step along the way, right? The step of being grateful for what we have, appreciating it, saying it's enough, falling in love with our life. It is kind of like a hack for the inside self, because it has you go like stop and say enough, enough, right? And then be with the idea, take it on, right? That things are enough. And it does interfere with the trying and the striving, right? Such that you now have to take the case that no matter what you do, because most of us pick on ourselves about what we don't get done or what we didn't do well enough, right? You take the case that whatever you have done is enough. And inevitably, what will be included in that picture of having enough will be some of the inside needs. Like, I am loved. I am valued. I am safe. I am worthy. Just because I say I am. I stand for that. I am acceptable. Even when I do things that somebody else doesn't think are acceptable, it doesn't mean I'm not, right? You begin to take the case that this is the idea of being enough and being filled up. And when this happens, there is a shift that goes on inside. So yeah, I'm in agreement that this phase of working with more is needed, and it's helpful and it's transformative, and it might be exactly like where you are right now. That's where you want to work. See, striving to have or attain or collect more doesn't actually produce more. And the reason for this is that the process, when done like this, is actually backwards. Things in the outer world are supposed to be the result of the dashboard or the outcome of what is set in motion and worked and processed and made more from within. So when we do it in reverse, then we're creating a kind of placebo effect for the insides. I'm watching time here. So this pursuit of more on the outside, redirected towards something on the inside, is going to set in motion a much truer adventure of learning about the self and building. I keep thinking money getting interest. It's like you're building interest on the self, right? Because you're learning, right? And it will use doing as the tool or the vehicle for this discovery rather than being the ultimate primary point of it. So more is having more of you to handle life. Resilient listening, part of that, right? Relationship, working on all that core stuff. More is having access to part of you that would normally be hidden and that maybe you even run from, and maybe it's unspeakable. More is about getting so filled up with you and working through your fears and your insecurities and your inadequacies. And yes, everybody has them. The less than places, that you actually can walk with a metaphoric full tummy. One that says, I can handle this without tapping out, right? That you have a full tummy that actually feels as if you are enough in who you are and what you bring to the world, this world. And the full tummy is a result of de-emphasizing the external more and redirecting it internally so that you're opening up all this more material, these thoughts, these feelings, these motives, these come-froms, these deeper being awarenesses about how you fit in the world and the existential kinds of thoughts, right? Like you get in there and that's where you work from. And then your creativity just emerges, right? It just shows out, right? So if you have the idea of wanting more money or wanting to be healthier, then you'll come upon the parts of yourself that felt deprived and did things and thought things and felt things, right? That's how you get there. So any more we want on the outside is going to illuminate the more of the relationship with yourself. Now, if you make yourself wrong and you judge yourself for these actions and you don't work it, you're going to end up with less of yourself, and that wasn't our goal. You cannot shortcut this. So when we develop more by coming into relationship with ourselves, especially the parts that aren't ideal, we're going to run across lots of hidden motives and actions that have probably influenced our lives in ways that we didn't recognize at the time. I want you to think about the idea of what is it to have the courage to face it all. Our come-froms, our real thoughts, the places we're acting out of deprivation, and just sit with the self. So on that note, I'm going to say thank you for being here this evening. I'm going to remind you that next week on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock is my last show, and it's going to be a doozy. I'm sure I'm going to cry my eyes out some point in it. And thank you for being here this evening. And feel free to always write me if you have questions or thoughts at hello@expeditionself.com. Au revoir. Have a nice evening.